The Last Stand. Dr. Sarah Chen watched the crimson sunset through the crystalline dome of the Craxon Research Facility, her fingers absently tracing the familiar patterns of the laboratory bench. The alien world's binary stars cast strange shadows across her workstation, where experimental cultures grew in their quantum-sealed containers. 6 months had passed since her capture, since she'd watched Earth's last defense fleet dissolve into atoms against the Craxon's superior weaponry. The Craxon thought they'd won. They believed they'd captured humanity's final scientist, forcing her to work on their biological weapons program. What they didn't know was that Sarah had been waiting for this moment for 15 years, ever since she'd discovered the truth in humanity's oldest archaeological sites. Dr. Chen. The resonant voice of Commander Vextar interrupted her thoughts. The towering Craxon officer's iridescent scales shifted from deep purple to an aggressive red as he approached. The High Council requires your presence. Your progress on Project Genesis has interested them. Sarah suppressed a smile. Of course they were interested. She'd shown them exactly what they wanted to see. Breakthrough after breakthrough in biological warfare. Each success had earned her more access, more trust, more resources. The Craxon were so convinced of their superiority that they never questioned why a defeated human would help them so readily. "I'd be honored to present my findings, Commander," she replied, keeping her voice carefully neutral. The neural dampener at the base of her skull tingled, their crude attempt to prevent any telepathic resistance. They hadn't realized that human minds had evolved far beyond such simple constraints. The journey to the High Council chamber took them through the heart of the facility. Sarah observed the other enslaved species, the crystalline Axlath, the gaseous Myrid, even a few surviving Terran colonists, all bent to the Craxon's will. Each face she passed strengthened her resolve. Today would change everything. The council chamber was a marvel of bioengineering, its walls alive with pulsing veins of light. 7 Craxon elders sat in a semicircle, their ancient scales bearing the deep blue of supposed wisdom. Sarah had learned to read their color patterns months ago. Right now, they were radiating anticipation. Dr. Chen, the first elder's voice rumbled through the chamber. "Your work on Project Genesis has exceeded all expectations. You've proven that even a human can serve the Empire's greater purpose." Sarah bowed deeply, using the motion to check the quantum transmitter hidden beneath her skin. "Active. Perfect. You honor me, First Elder. Project Genesis represents the culmination of everything I've learned about Craxon biology. May I show you its full potential?" The First Elder gestured permission. Sarah approached the central platform, her heart racing beneath her calm exterior. The quantum computer woven into her nervous system had already interfaced with the facility's network. 15 years of preparation came down to this moment. Project Genesis began with a simple question. She began, activating the holographic display. How could we improve upon the Craxon's natural biological advantages? The answer lay in your own evolutionary history. The display showed a complex molecular structure rotating slowly in the air. "This is the key protein complex I isolated from your genetic material. It's responsible for your remarkable regenerative abilities." The elders leaned forward, their scales rippling with interest. Sarah continued, each word carefully chosen. "By modifying this complex, I've created a way to enhance your natural abilities exponentially. Imagine warriors who could regenerate from any injury in seconds, who could adapt to any environment instantly." "You've tested this?" the second elder demanded, his scales flushing orange with excitement. "Of course." Sarah gestured, and new data flowed across the display. "The results have been remarkable. Would you like to see them firsthand?" The first elder's approval was immediate, exactly as she predicted. Sarah removed a vial of iridescent liquid from her lab coat. "This contains the modified protein complex, encoded with specific genetic triggers. 1 drop is all it takes to begin the enhancement process." She watched as the elder's personal guard stepped forward to accept the vial, their scales bright with anticipation. None of them noticed the quantum patterns shifting in the liquid, the microscopic changes that had taken Sarah years to perfect. "For the glory of the Empire," she said, the ritual words tasting like ash in her mouth. The guards administered the serum to their masters, each elder accepting it without hesitation. Their arrogance had always been their greatest weakness. Sarah counted silently as the serum took effect. The elders' scales began to shine with unprecedented brilliance, exactly as her tests had shown. They marveled at the sensation, their bodies beginning to pulse with new power. Then the quantum lock engaged. The elders froze, their scales locked in patterns of confusion and growing fear. Sarah straightened, finally allowing herself to smile. "You should have studied Earth's history more carefully," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent chamber. "Humans didn't evolve on Earth. We seated ourselves there, hiding from something far worse than your empire. We scattered our technology across 1,000 worlds, disguised as archaeological artifacts, waiting for the day we'd need it again." The quantum transmitter beneath her skin pulsed, sending signals throughout the facility. In laboratories and holding cells, other captured humans received the signal. Neural dampeners shorted out. Quantum locks engaged in vital systems. The facility's own bioengineered architecture began to shift, responding to commands hidden in its creation. Project Genesis wasn't about enhancing your biology, Sarah continued, watching as understanding dawned in the elders' immobilized eyes. It was about awakening what we left behind. Right now, quantum-encoded signals are spreading through your empire, activating dormant protocols we buried in your species' DNA millennia ago. Humanity didn't lose this war. We finally found a way to win it without destroying you completely. Alarms began to blare throughout the facility. On screens throughout the chamber, reports flooded in from across cracks in space. Their mighty empire was freezing in place, locked down by fail-safes older than their civilization. Sarah felt the weight of 15 years of preparation lift from her shoulders. "Now," she said, addressing not just the elders, but all the watching slaves and servants, "let's talk about building something better than an empire." The revolution had begun. Seeds of rebellion. The aftermath of Sarah's revelation rippled through the Kraxan facility like a quantum shockwave. Through the crystalline dome, she watched as transport ships carrying newly freed slaves lifted into the violet sky. The Kraxan guards stood frozen at their posts, their scales locked in patterns of confusion and fear, victims of their own genetic heritage. Beside her, Calith, a towering Axlath scientist, shifted her crystalline form to better catch the light of the binary stars. "The quantum signatures are stable," she reported, her voice chiming like wind through crystal. "The lockdown is holding across 87% of Kraxan space." Sarah nodded, studying the holographic display showing the spread of her carefully engineered revolution. Red dots representing Kraxan strongholds winked out one by one as the quantum protocols activated. But scattered across the map, stubborn clusters of resistance remained. "They're adapting faster than we predicted," Sarah muttered, zooming in on a particularly large cluster in the Centauri sector. Some of their younger warriors seemed partially immune to the quantum lock. "Did you not anticipate this possibility?" The resonant voice belonged to Myrid, a gaseous being who had once been the Kraxan's leading theoretical physicist. His cloudy form swirled with patterns of concern. "I anticipated everything," Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface, "including the fact that we'd need a second phase." She turned to face her unlikely allies, beings who had been slaves just hours ago, now standing as equals in humanity's hidden war. The quantum lock was never meant to be permanent. It's a pause, a chance to reshape the galaxy without destroying it. The door to the command center slid open, admitting Rajkumar, one of the few other surviving human scientists. His dark eyes were bright with excitement. "The archives are intact," he reported. "All of it. The true histories, the star maps, everything the Kraxan tried to erase about their own past." Sarah smiled. This was the real treasure, worth far more than the temporary victory of immobilizing the Kraxan Empire. "Show them," she instructed. Raj activated the central holographic display, the chamber filled with images of ancient star charts, archaeological data, and genetic sequences. The Kraxan weren't always conquerors, he explained to their assembled allies. 10,000 years ago, they were peaceful explorers, one of many species uplifted by something else. The images shifted, showing vast structures orbiting distant stars, technology that made even the Kraxan's greatest achievements look primitive. We don't know what happened to the beings who built these, Sarah continued. But we know they left behind guardians, humans seated across thousands of worlds, carrying fragments of ancient knowledge in our very DNA. Calith's crystalline form sparkled with understanding. The stories in my people's songs, the travelers who taught us to shape crystal with thought alone. They were human. Some of them, Sarah nodded. We scattered ourselves across the galaxy, hiding our true nature, waiting for the day we'd be needed. The Kraxan's rise to power, their campaign of conquest, it triggered protocols that had lain dormant in human DNA for millennia. We began to remember. But even as she spoke, new alerts flashed across the tactical display. More resistance clusters were appearing, young Kraxan warriors somehow shaking off the quantum lock. And worse, long-range sensors showed ships approaching from the outer reaches of the Empire, designs that didn't match any known Kraxan vessels. They had contingencies too, Myrid observed, his gaseous form darkening. Hidden fleets, warriors bred to resist ancient controls. Of course they did. Sarah's smile didn't waver. That's exactly what we wanted them to do. She pressed her palm to the quantum interface, sending new commands racing through the facility's networks. The quantum lock wasn't just about stopping them. It was about forcing them to reveal everything they kept hidden, every secret weapon and contingency plan. The display shifted again, now showing the approaching ships in detail. Their biological technology had been pushed to its limits, creating vessels that were almost living beings. But in their desperate attempts to overcome the quantum lock, the Kraxan had done exactly what Sarah had predicted. They'd activated even older protocols, fail-safes buried so deep in their genetic code that even they had forgotten them. Look at the quantum signatures, she instructed her allies. The data streams told a story that made Calith's crystal form ring with surprise and Myrid's gases swirl in complex patterns of shock. The Kraxan's secret weapons were broadcasting signals that matched the ancient artifacts, the very technology their empire had spent centuries trying to destroy. They've made themselves into keys, Raj breathed, understanding dawning in his eyes. Keys to unlock. A new alert cut him off. Deep beneath the facility, something was awakening. The bioengineered floors trembled as ancient machinery, disguised for millennia as natural rock formations, began to power up. Similar reports flooded in from across Kraxan space, hidden installations activating, responding to signals broadcast by the very ships meant to break the quantum lock. Sarah felt the quantum computer in her nervous system connecting to these awakening systems, recognizing codes older than human civilization. Now we know why we were scattered across the stars, she said softly. Not just to hide, not just to wait. We were meant to guide what comes next. The holographic display erupted with new data as sensors detected massive energy signatures from beneath the surfaces of supposedly dead worlds. The Kraxan's secret weapons had become unwitting harbingers of their own transformation, their desperate bid for freedom activating systems meant to reshape civilizations. They're not going to like this, Myrid observed as the first transformation waves began to ripple through Kraxan space, carrying changes written into their species' DNA eons ago. No, Sarah agreed, watching as the waves approached their facility. But sometimes saving a civilization means letting it become something new. She turned to her allies, her expression serious. The real work begins now. Are you ready? The chamber filled with gestures of agreement, crystalline chimes, gaseous swirls, and determined nods. As the transformation wave reached them, Sarah felt the quantum computer in her nervous system connecting to something vast and ancient, a network spanning galaxies. The true purpose of humanity's long exile was finally being revealed. And somewhere in the outer darkness, something stirred, awakened by signals it had waited eons to receive. The game was far larger than even Sarah had imagined, and the next move was about to begin. The awakening. The transformation wave changed everything it touched. Sarah watched from the command center as it swept through the facility, leaving reality altered in its wake. The crystalline dome above them shifted and flowed like liquid glass, its structure reorganizing into patterns that seemed to defy physics. The frozen Kraxan guards unfroze, but they weren't quite Kraxan anymore. Remarkable, breathed Calith, her crystalline form resonating with the changed architecture. Their genetic structure is reverting to something older. The Kraxan scales had taken on new patterns, flowing with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Their eyes held ancient knowledge, programming activated by the transformation wave. But most importantly, their minds had changed. Sarah could feel it through her quantum interface, the imperious certainty of the Empire giving way to something more complex, more aware. "We remember," said one of the transformed Kraxan, their voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "We were more than this, before the great sleep, before the forgetting." But there was no time to marvel at the changes. New alerts flashed across the quantum displays. Massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic core. The ancient systems weren't the only things awakening. Multiple quantum ruptures detected, Raj reported, his fingers dancing across the interface. Something's coming through from elsewhere. Sarah felt her quantum computer interfacing with the newly transformed facility, accessing records that had been hidden in its very structure. Images filled the holographic display, vast beings of light and thought, civilizations that had transcended physical form, and the threat that had driven them to hide their legacy among younger species. "The Void Hunters," she whispered, the knowledge flowing through her neural interface. "They consume civilizations that reach beyond their assigned boundaries. That's why the ancients hid their technology, disguised it as natural evolution. They knew the hunters would return eventually." The transformed Kraxan moved forward, their new forms rippling with understanding. "We were made to be guardians," one said, ancient memories surfacing. "Not conquerors. Our empire was a corruption of our true purpose." Through the facility's enhanced sensors, they could see the Void Hunters emerging from quantum space. They were magnificent and terrible, vast structures of dark energy and impossible geometry, drawing in light and matter around them. Ships that had survived the transformation wave began to vanish as the hunters fed. "We need to link the network," Sarah announced, her mind racing ahead to possibilities hidden in her quantum-enhanced memories. Every transformed facility, every awakened system. The ancients didn't just hide their technology. They built a defense grid spanning the galaxy. Calith's crystalline form chimed in alarm. The energy requirements would be astronomical. "That's why they needed us all," Raj realized, understanding blooming across his features. Humans to carry the activation codes, Kraxan to build the infrastructure, Axlath to channel the energies, Myrid to understand the quantum principles. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across the quantum interface. Every species the Kraxan enslaved. They were drawn to conquer specific worlds, specific peoples, by programming they didn't even know they carried. The Empire was a corruption of the plan, but it still brought together everything we need. The Void Hunters were spreading out now, their impossible forms distorting space itself as they approached. But in response, ancient machinery was awakening on countless worlds. The transformed Kraxan moved with new purpose, their forms shifting as they took their true places in the facility's operations. "Quantum network extending," Myrid reported, his gaseous form swirling with complex equations. "Connection established with 37% of transformed facilities." "Not enough," Sarah grimaced. "We need at least 60% to power up the grid." She turned to the assembled beings. Transformed Kraxan, crystalline Axlath, gaseous Myrid, and the handful of humans who had carried this hidden knowledge for so long. Every species in this room was engineered to play a part in what's coming. Everything that's happened, the Empire, the Resistance, even my capture, was leading to this moment. The facility shuddered as the nearest void hunter began to feed on the outer atmosphere. They could see it through the crystalline dome, a vast darkness that hurt the eyes to look at, consuming reality itself. 52% connection, Raj called out. But the hunters are disrupting the quantum signals. We're losing the outer facilities. Sarah felt the quantum computer in her nervous system burning as it processed more data than any human brain was meant to handle. The ancients had hidden their final defense in fragments, scattered across species and stars. Now she had to piece it together before the hunters consumed everything. The transformation wave, she gasped, new connections forming in her enhanced mind. It's not just changing physical structure. It's altering quantum states, shifting reality's underlying code. If we can amplify it through the network. The transformed Kraxan moved as one, their new forms flowing like liquid metal as they interfaced with the facility systems. Kalith's crystalline form began to pulse with gathered energy. Myrid's gaseous body swirled with quantum calculations. 65%, Raj announced. Grid is powering up. Through the dome, they watched as lines of force began to materialize in space, a vast geometric pattern connecting transformed facilities across thousands of light years. The Void Hunters paused in their feeding, ancient recognition flowing through their impossible forms. Sarah felt the quantum computer interfacing with the completed grid, accessing protocols hidden since the dawn of time. The transformed beings around her moved in perfect synchronization, each species fulfilling the role they had been designed for eons ago. The grid isn't a weapon, she realized as the knowledge flooded through her. It's a key. Reality itself is about to transform. As the grid reached full power, space itself began to change. The Void Hunters tried to retreat, but they were caught in the pattern they themselves had helped complete. Everything was connected. The transformation of the Kraxan, the awakening of ancient systems, even the Hunters' arrival. All part of a plan so vast it had taken millions of years to unfold. The universe held its breath, poised on the edge of a change that would rewrite the fundamental laws of existence. And through her quantum interface, Sarah finally understood why humanity had been chosen to carry this knowledge through the ages. Because sometimes the only way to save reality is to be willing to imagine something entirely new. Breaking chains. Reality rippled like water disturbed by a stone, waves of transformation spreading outward from the quantum grid. Sarah felt it through her neural interface, the fundamental forces of the universe shifting, rewriting themselves according to patterns laid down by the ancients. The Void Hunters twisted in impossible ways, their dark forms caught in the changing laws of physics. Pattern cohesion at 93%. Raj called out, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The grid is holding. Through the crystalline dome, now alive with flowing quantum energies, they watched as space itself began to fold in new ways. The binary stars overhead seemed to multiply, their light fracturing into spectrums that had never existed before. The transformed Kraxan moved with increasing confidence, their new forms perfectly adapted to the changing reality. We're receiving signals, Kalith announced, her crystalline form resonating with incoming transmissions. From everywhere. Every transformed facility, every awakened system, and something else. Sarah accessed the data through her quantum interface, and for a moment, her enhanced mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The signals weren't just coming from their galaxy. They were emanating from parallel spaces that had always existed but had been hidden from normal perception. The ancients didn't just hide their technology. She breathed, understanding flooding through her. They hid entire layers of reality. The Void Hunters didn't drive them to extinction. They drove them to transcend. The facility shuddered as another wave of change passed through it. The transformed Kraxan were evolving further, their forms becoming more fluid, more in tune with the quantum nature of existence. The Axelath's crystalline structures began to extend into dimensions that hadn't existed moments before. The myriad's gaseous forms pulsed with new energies. "Look," Raj pointed to the tactical display, where the Void Hunters were undergoing their own transformation. Their darkness was becoming something else. Not light, exactly, but a different kind of existence. They weren't being destroyed. They were being reintegrated into the fuller reality that was emerging. This was their purpose, one of the transformed Kraxans said, their voice carrying harmonics that seemed to echo from other dimensions. The hunters were meant to pressure younger species, force them to evolve, to remember. Even their consumption of civilizations was part of the pattern, storing energy for this moment. Sarah felt her quantum computer burning as it tried to process the expanding nature of existence. Every species in the room was changing, adapting to a universe that was becoming more complex, more interconnected. But with the changes came understanding, knowledge hidden in their very atoms, waiting for this moment of awakening. "There's something coming through," Myrid announced, his gaseous form swirling with new colors that had no names in human language. The quantum grid was pulsing with energy, its pattern shifting to accommodate something vast. Through the facility's enhanced sensors, they could see it, or rather, sense it. The ancients were returning, not as the biological entities they had once been, but as beings of pure quantum information. Their presence filled the newly expanded reality, bringing with it knowledge that had been waiting eons to be rediscovered. "You have done well." A voice that wasn't a voice echoed through their minds. The great cycle continues. Life adapts, evolves, remembers. But even as the ancients returned, new alerts flashed across the quantum displays. The transformation wasn't complete. Pockets of resistance remained, areas where the old reality clung stubbornly to existence, and in those spaces, danger lurked. "The old Kraxan Empire," Raj reported, highlighting clusters of ships and stations that had somehow resisted the change. They're trying to reverse the transformation, using weapons we never knew they had. Sarah felt it through the quantum network, desperate attempts to maintain the simpler universe, to reject the complexity of true existence. The remaining Imperial forces were willing to tear reality itself apart rather than accept transformation. "They don't understand," one of the transformed Kraxans said, their form rippling with concern. "Reversal at this stage would destroy everything. Not just the new reality, but the old one too." Sarah straightened, her decision made. "Then we need to show them. Not force them to change, but help them remember why the ancients chose all of us for this moment." She turned to her assembled allies. Beings who had been enemies hours ago, now united in a universe more complex and beautiful than any of them had imagined. "The grid isn't just a tool for transformation," she explained, her enhanced mind seeing patterns within patterns. "It's a bridge, a way to share consciousness across all levels of reality. If we can link with the resistance forces, let them experience the truth." The transformed Kraxan moved into position, their forms creating new geometric patterns in space. Kalith's crystalline structure began to pulse with gathered energy. Myraid's quantum calculations swirled through dimensions that hadn't existed before the transformation. A joining of minds, Raj nodded, understanding. Not conquest, not forced evolution, but shared awareness. Sarah felt the quantum computer in her nervous system connecting to the grid in new ways, preparing to bridge not just space, but consciousness itself. The ancients watched from their quantum realm, their presence a reminder of what life could become. The facility hummed with power as they prepared for one final transformation, not of reality this time, but of understanding. In the space between moments, Sarah realized that this had always been humanity's true purpose, not to fight, not to conquer, but to help all species remember what they could become. The universe held its breath as they reached out across the quantum grid, ready to share the truth that had been hidden in their genes since the beginning of time. That existence itself was an endless process of becoming more than you were before. Dawn of liberation. The quantum grid pulsed with unprecedented power as Sarah initiated the consciousness bridge. Through her neural interface, she could feel the minds of everyone in the facility extending outward. Transformed Kraxen, crystalline Axlath, gaseous Myrid, and the handful of humans who had carried ancient knowledge through the ages. Their combined awareness spread through the new dimensions of reality, reaching toward those who still clung to the old world. Contact in 3, 2, 1. Raj's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere as their consciousness expanded across space. The resistance hit them like a wall of fear and denial. Sarah felt the terror of the Imperial forces as they faced a reality they couldn't understand, their desperate attempt to maintain the simpler universe they had ruled. But instead of fighting against it, she opened herself fully to their experience, letting them feel her own journey of discovery. Through the quantum link, memories flowed both ways. The resistance forces witnessed the truth of their species' original purpose, the greater destiny that had been hidden in their genes. In return, Sarah and her allies felt the genuine fear and loss that drove the resistance, the terror of losing an identity built on conquest and control. "We don't have to destroy who you are," Sarah projected through the quantum consciousness. "Evolution means becoming more than you were, not less than you are." The transformed Kraxen added their own understanding, sharing the liberation they had found in remembering their true nature. Kalith's crystalline resonance carried the harmony of multiple realities existing together. Myrid's quantum calculations demonstrated the mathematical beauty of complexity, but it was the ancients' presence that finally broke through. Their vast quantum consciousness enfolded the resistant minds, showing them visions of what life could become. Not an end to individual existence, but an expansion into something greater, a reality where every species could achieve its full potential. The pattern completes, one of the resistance commanders transmitted, their consciousness beginning to shift. Across the quantum displays, Sarah watched as the holdout ships and stations stopped their attempts to reverse the transformation. One by one, they began to accept the change, their forms evolving to match the new reality. 100% transformation achieved, Raj announced, his voice thick with emotion. "The grid is stabilizing." Through the crystalline dome, they watched as the last pieces fell into place. The Void Hunters, now transformed into beings of quantum possibility, took their place in the new order of existence. The expanded universe shimmered with life and awareness that had always been present but hidden from view. The ancients' presence filled the quantum network one final time. The cycle continues. They communicated. But this time, evolution need not be driven by conflict. "You have found a better way." Sarah felt her quantum computer interfacing with the completed grid, accessing the full scope of what they had achieved. The transformation hadn't just changed the nature of reality. It had changed the nature of progress itself. Future species would not need to be forced to evolve through pressure and conflict. The knowledge would be there for them to find when they were ready, guided by those who had gone before. "So what happens now?" Raj asked, his consciousness still linked with the others through the quantum bridge. The transformed Kraxen moved in fluid patterns that matched the flow of the new reality. "We build," one of them said, "not an empire, but a community of worlds. Each species free to develop in its own way, but connected to the greater whole. We explore," Kalith added, her crystalline form refracting light from dimensions that had no names. "There are still mysteries in this expanded universe, still more to discover and become." "We guide," Myrid contributed, his gaseous form swirling with quantum possibilities. "Other species will emerge, begin their own journeys. They will need teachers, not conquerors." Sarah stood in the center of the transformed facility, feeling the pulse of the new reality through her neural interface. Humanity's long vigil was over, but their purpose had only begun. They had been chosen not because they were superior, but because they could imagine possibilities beyond the obvious, accept change without losing themselves, and help others do the same. "We remember," she said finally, speaking for all of them. "And we help others remember too." Not just what they were, but what they can become. The facility hummed with power as the new reality settled into its final form. Through the quantum grid, Sarah could feel countless species beginning to explore their expanded existence, discovering abilities and connections that had always been within them. The transformed Kraxan were already reaching out to their former subjects, not to command now, but to collaborate and learn together. Above them, the binary stars shone with new light, their spectrum extended into dimensions that only awakened eyes could see. The universe had not ended but transformed, becoming what it was always meant to be, a place where every form of life could achieve its full potential. Sarah felt the quantum computer in her nervous system synchronizing with the completed grid, ready to help guide the next phase of cosmic evolution. Around her, beings that had once been enemies stood united in their expanded awareness, their consciousness bridging realities that had seemed impossible hours before. The fear of the Void Hunters, the tyranny of the Kraxan Empire, the long hiding of the ancients, all had been steps on a path to this moment. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not a victory, but an awakening. In the space between dimensions, Sarah smiled. The universe was no longer a battlefield to be conquered, but a garden to be tended. And they would tend it together, growing toward a future limited only by their ability to imagine what could be. The dawn of a new age had arrived, and its light shone through all realities at once.